muted. You're muted.
All right, let me do that again. Good morning, everybody. This is Attorney Clinton Farris with Straight Up the Middle, your In-Touch News Radio, reality radio, where everybody can be a star. Want to welcome you to this week's great show. And I have with me my co-host, none other than the Professor Tony Seabrook. How are you, Professor?
I am doing well, man. I tell you what, I'm doing it in a big fashion because in the background over my left shoulder, you should see my grandson. So I'm about to show how you can work and take care of and babysit kids at the same time.
Parents and moms and dads all over the country who've been stuck at home homeschooling their kids surely empathize with you. But unfortunately, you only get this one day. They're doing this every day. I mean, really, I think parents are going to come out of this COVID virus with a new appreciation of what our teachers go through every day, dealing with kids in and out, and then trying to get other things done. So, so I get you. You know, my family's taking off for spring break, so I'm soloing it here. So I've got the dog on one side and everything else going on. But good morning to you and welcome to the show. Listen, another great week, you know, and I know we have our list of things that we want to touch on, you know, that we kind of, you know, already kind of thrown around a little bit. But your sentiments about the week. What did you think this week was on your end? What did you think of?
Unless we want to just talk about Joe Biden's B+ speech. You know, that's pretty much what it is. But I tell you what, on a serious note, we just talked about parenting and this COVID pandemic, and then kind of teetering on what Biden talked about. It made me think about, once again, what students are actually going through. And I'm an educator, and I'm guilty of this, of not keeping in the forefront, because I deal with college students, but not keeping in the forefront the bigger picture. And in our childhood, we didn't have to deal with something like this. I mean, school-age children are going to be, I don't want to use the term scarred. I think that's too strong of a term, but they are certainly going to carry this burden forward. Just in thinking how many might be retained, how many have lost that one time to go to a prom, and there are people, you know, in non-pandemics who don't go to prom, but those things really mean something to that one student or to those few students who were looking forward to it, and it was squandered away, and they carry that bias or that animosity toward government. You know, we may be creating some, or out of this, not we as in intentionally, but out of this may come some real bitter adults. Have we really thought about that? And when we talk about getting back to school and what parents are going through, we throw around the whole thing about mental health, but are we targeting how they're processing this or trying to process it out of their system? And that's rhetorical, but you just can't get around that. Again, given what Biden talked about, or, you know, his speech to the nation, and just where we are. And again, in my field, just what are we missing? And how's that going to come back to haunt us in about another 15, 20 years, you know, when these school-age children are now really out in the workforce and pushing their politics?
You know, I had not really thought about that a lot. You know, you know, that's interesting you bring that up, because, you know, life is a traumatic experience in and of itself. I mean, life, just living, the things you go through, relationships, ups and downs, life, death, successes, failures, disappointments. You know, it's just an interesting way that I think about it, and how it affects people differently, how you decide or what control you have over things. And one of the things you mentioned that caught my attention, and that is the association with this experience and government. Right. That's very interesting to me, that the framing of it would be one where how this goes or does not go, or my experience in it or out of it, is connected somehow to government. That's interesting that you put it in that context. You know, I think about my life, and I'm going to think about my Black experience in America. There are a lot of things that the government has done to me, that the government structure and inability to see all of us equally that it has done. And then there are a bunch of other things that people did to me, individuals in their space and capacity where they had control and dominion that they did to me. And then there are other things that the sun, the moon, the sky, the rain, the water, mosquitoes, it did to me as well. And I've never framed those things from a trauma frame. They are the world that we're in. You know, it's kind of like the squirrels in my yard being upset because I cut down a tree. Well, the tree's gone. You can sit there and lament the tree being cut down and be upset and walk in a circle, but you might want to look up. There's a hawk above you, and he ain't worried about that tree being cut down.
Right.
And so I'm using that analogy to say that I've never associated what we're going through in this pandemic with the government and then being upset with the government about it.
Right.
You know, it's a natural occurrence. The government is trying, I think, to do the best it can for citizens. And they may get some of that right, and they may get a lot of it wrong. That's my, I think at the base level. Now, then you have individuals in it who are going to profiteer, who are going to manipulate, and that's a whole different dynamic to look at. But I would hope to think that, now I'm going to use something else, that the longer time goes, the madder I get about. Hold on for a second. The longer time goes on, I get madder and madder, Professor. And I'm going to tell you how it starts. I was getting ready for the first grade. It was the summer, and a green car pulled up front in our house.
A what car?
A green car.
A green car, okay.
And on the side of the car, it had, I want to say it said U.S. Army. In white. Plain green car, like matte green, like you see duffel bag green. There's another green. I remember that car, and we all walked out on the porch. And my brother, who had just graduated high school, got in that car in the back seat. And he had been drafted. And he left to go fight in Vietnam. That's the government doing something to you. And I didn't understand what it all meant. But I absolutely remember standing there with all my brothers, my sisters, my mom, my dad, as he got into that car and drove away at 18. He was never the same person, not remotely close. When he came back from Vietnam, you know, he was just torn up, and he never really regained himself. Now, he was a guy who was state champion in wrestling, a phenomenal chess player, self-taught himself 7 instruments, could sing almost in any key. I mean, in my mind, I know I'm talking now, Professor, he was like a superhero. This guy could do anything, and he was only 5'1", maybe 140 pounds. And he went to Vietnam, and it came back a mess. And he never regained his life, and he died really early in his mid to late 30s. He died before the government accepted any of what it had done to people in that war. And when you go look at that war, the specifics of it, Professor, we should have never even been there. It's worse than Iraq. We had no, and then at least in Iraq, we used a volunteer army and mainly a lot more special force trained people that we gave the equipment to do what they needed to do. We never tried to win in Vietnam. And we played like people didn't know what they were talking about who did it. That's the government doing something to you. So my kids now, they only get to hear about their Uncle George. They never get to meet him and see him. But how about this, Professor? They got 2 of my brothers. Because my next brother also went to Vietnam as well.
Wow.
So when I think of that's government doing something to you, the virus, I don't know if the government's doing anything to us. It's just happening.
Well, now let me jump in there because you're the only person I think we're around the same age. When you mentioned Vietnam in the context of, your brother, one of your siblings going off, I'm like, I had to remember you said you were getting ready for first grade. So there's a huge age difference. So now that makes sense. I'm thinking, wait a minute.
Yeah, they're like 10, 20. They're graduating the year I start school.
Right. But you said that was government. And I can relate to that. But I believe the kids these days, because of what we experienced for we're really in the last 2 years, but some could say the whole Trump presidency, but we know once it became an election, the election campaign, it all became political. And I don't think children this age is going to take a lot of want from them, personal conviction to try to piece out what happened, because I think they believe it's all government. We say politics. To them, it's government. It's not their school. It's not their parents. It's not Walmart doing it. It is the government doing it. So I don't know that they're going to try to differentiate between, it was a war. It was government. But interesting. So kind of not even to move on, but to kind of add to this, I just shared without bio with DJ Ann, I just shared what my favorite quote was. One of my favorite quotes of many. And I used to use this as being a Toastmaster, having a theme, and just trying to give people something to maybe craft some talking points around. That's what you do. G.K. Chesterton, he had a quote that fairy tales do not tell children that dragons exist. Children already know dragons exist. Fairy tales tell children that dragons can be killed. So in the context of what we're talking about is, one, you can say how the world has changed over the years and robbing kids of their innocence, having them do this. And, I can go into the trans with my right-leaning talking points. But when we think about what we're talking about, this COVID, there's some manipulation that people that I would say my kids, my grandkids may overhear me making an argument that I don't trust the variants. I think the government is fudging numbers. I think the government wants to see blah, blah, blah. We're really robbing the children. It's not about fault. We're trying to do the best we can as a country. But I think we just robbed. The whole year has gone by, a complete year. And a century ago today, I think I read, 100 years ago today, or not today, but this month, was the Spanish flu. How many people died? Like 5 million way back then? And it was a 2-year plague, basically. We're in year 2. So we're repeating history, and us that have jobs and careers and we're talking and pontificating here and there, but kids are just trying to live, and they've lost a whole year. And a great many, when we talk about nationally, are going to be retained more than needed to be. They already had maybe academic issues, but now they may be retained, and we're talking over their heads about blah, blah, blah. So, it's going to be hard to figure out.
I agree with that, because I've watched it. My daughter is a senior this year, and she, in high school, you kind of build yourself up for that big senior year,
right?
In fact, she's a cheerleader, and one of the things they would say in their cheer would be 2021 is 2020 is our year, and I remember that, and she's got all these high marks. She's president of almost everything she's touched. Phenomenal GPA. Everything's just clicking along, but it's all having to be recognized remotely. She's doing a muted spring break. Usually senior high school, you get a place on the beach and everybody spends a week there doing their, she's on the road with my wife, and they're going to go do some stuff, but no group activities. So you're right. I agree with that wholeheartedly, but we're trying to get there. And that gives us an avenue to go into the bill, the $1.9 billion, trillion dollars, $1,400 checks in the mail as we speak to people. Nobody's name on it that anybody would recognize on the signature block. Just being done.
Biden's name is not on it?
No, 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 no need. What no need. It's so far. I would say I'm just so thoroughly pleased with the tenor of his presidency, the tone, the professionalism, the maturity. A lot of things that we kind of took for granted. We could drill down to the substance, but those things have been quite reassuring. I was just bothered again that when the previous bills came through, the Democrats were willing to go along with what Republicans wanted to do. They're willing to go along for the sake of the country. I'm just shocked that the Republicans in Congress are so partisan that they would have to say to Americans, who really need that $1,400, well, I'm not voting for it. What were your thoughts when you saw this thing pass in such a partisan way, and about the things that are in the bill?
Well, I'm not surprised because it was politicized and it was partisan, and we know what the Democrats were trying to do, take away from all the accomplishments that the previous administration has allowed this president to now say, he's had some 5% increase in the number of people being vaccinated a month. Well, you wouldn't have had that if Warp Speed wasn't there, and all the detractions and all the naysayers about, what he really did and what Russia did and what in the U.S. and blah, blah, blah. But this administration is capitalizing, just like you guys wanted Trump to give Obama some credit. Oh, his economy for 3 years and blah, blah, blah. But this guy comes in, and while I give him a B, I can recognize and accept the void that he feels as far as diplomacy and tenor and all of that, statesmanship. I get it. But people in my camp can care less about that when we look at what we thought about government overall. Yeah, we had a guy who could be a jerk and a bull in the China house, yeah. But he did the things that he said he was going to do, and we didn't feel he was blowing smoke up our butt. So, but to get back to what you said and why Republicans, I'm not bothered that it's not bipartisan, because there's not much that's going to be to sign it just because it's good politics is why they would have done it. They said they did it along reasons. I listened to the McCarthy speech again. He talked about the pork that was in the bill, and we know pork is in all bills, but now I'm repeating this. I like to always disclaim that I'm repeating this stat that less than 9%. So if it's a $1.9 trillion bill, the largest spending bill on record. Now, I think you would probably know that, so you might fact check me, but I don't think anyone's disputed that. The largest spending bill in the U.S. history, almost $2 trillion. Less than 9% of that goes to actually COVID state.
That's not true.
That's a talking point. I sound repeating it. So we're going to talk through that.
Okay.
Are you disputing that like cities like San Francisco getting all these hundreds of billions of dollars to wipe out their debt? We know that we put that on the pork. But the whole thing about the illegal immigrants receiving all this type of assistance when they come through, the backdrop of that is what's going on at the border that Biden didn't want to talk about, his open door policy, open borders policy. So they're sticking to their morals, Republicans, and they're not going to sign on to it. But at least they can hang their hat on. I like how McCarthy framed it. Before this bill, there were 5 relief bills in all of some sort that they passed in previous administration. The only difference in this is the revenue funding, how they're going about doing it. I noticed and I caught this, how he said most of the school money for schools to reopen, because that's what they're trying to, Biden is like, what happened with the kids not being able to go to school and follow science, which bothers people like me who's taught the whole time. The whole year I've been in the classroom, never came out, reduced hours, but still in the classroom. But when he says, McCarthy says that most of the money is not released to the schools until 2022, 2023. Well, most is the operative word. That means some of it is immediate. I don't know what those numbers are. The bill is too big. I just hadn't dedicated any time to try to pinpoint where the money goes and when it goes. But in the meantime, people get $1,400, and that's really where we can start and stop. That gives some people some relief. $1,400 in most houses is going to pay the mortgage, and that's it, where it stops. Other houses, it may pay a couple of bills, maybe for a couple of months. But when we're talking about in the context of if we're talking about those households where kids aren't in school, and we know what the demographic is to make up the breakout for the Black and African Americans, minority demographics that don't have those white collar jobs that can work remotely, who've lost jobs and had to take a lesser job because they lost a job and got a job again, but not working the same hours, but kids at home, blah, blah, blah. So the $1,400 is going to be gone probably within the next 30 days. And so we go, then what? Because it's not just going to take them through. Even $2,000 is going to be gone in most households in 30 days. Now, if you're trying to put that on top of the savings, you might stretch that out 3 months. But then what?
All right, there we go. So even if you said that, I don't know that that's bad. As long as the money is not being stolen or wasted in a corner somewhere on a cornfield or something silly, it's still good money. So let's walk through what we're talking about. So individuals, married couples, individuals $1,400, married couples $2,800. I think that gets people a lot further along in life than we probably appreciate. Those people that are struggling, that's a lot of money. And I'd hope that it gets them to 2 or 3 months to get them to back to when we're back at, higher level of employment. More is open, the jobs are more in place, they're going. That's the first one. For a year, city governments have been incurring massive amounts of expenses related to COVID-related stuff, whatever it may be, feeding people, adding different security measures, whatever it may be. And to get them in a better, stronger fiscal position, I think is prudent, because there's no doubt they've had it. And to say that it's just 1 year and after this you'll be back to normal, no. So that money is stretched out over a couple of years. I think that's another good thing. It's clear that our schools were not prepared for this. And the reality, Professor, is we may be doing something in a similar vein coming down the pipe. Our schools have been underfunded for a number of years. So the federal government adding some help to the state governments, because you got to remember, because of lower activity, a lot of revenue is down, sales tax, collections, a lot of other stuff. So I think that giving the schools a little bit of help, then giving the local government some help is a good idea. Then we get to businesses. There's a large amount of that money that's going to assist small businesses, again, getting back to work, getting people in, getting people back on the payroll, employed, things of that nature. And then you have testing and the vaccine itself. We're going to be vaccinating people for a long time. And I got a feeling that we're going to need boost vaccines probably towards the end of the year somewhere. They don't want to scare people now, but there was a concern that the vaccines would only last, like the flu vaccine, a certain amount of time. So you're going to have a major operation in testing and vaccinating going forward. Then you got the undercurrent of healthcare issues coming out of people who've been affected by COVID. So just put some money in that category as well. Likewise, makes sense. Then there is some rental and homeowner assistance that's in the bill to assist people that pay rent, also to provide for some homelessness. Now, we know that people living homeless and on the streets and all that kind of stuff, they struggle. And they're more vulnerable to illness and disease and things of that nature and lack of health care. So that's another factor. I just think that none of the categories, and we can be technical about how the thing is structured, but none of them are bad categories. Who's against funding schools? I'm surprised they're against helping state governments, but I get that because they think they're big city governments that are only. But I'll tell you, the biggest state government that in the last 8 years that have gotten funding is Kentucky. And I wonder
the biggest state government, or you're saying in the context of getting money? Because I thought the biggest state government would be
the most money per capita coming out of Congress has gone into Kentucky, which gives us almost nothing. And the reason they do that is it's pet price. So I get that. I just think this thing's gonna come back to bite the doggone Republicans on the butt for not getting in there. But look, let me make sure people who are listening can connect with us if you'd like to. You can text us at 25324 and put in SUTM. After you do the number to text to is 25324. Put in SUTM. You'll get a link and you can come in and participate on the show. We love to hear your thoughts and ideas. All right, Professor, I'm gonna give you one. I don't usually give you one like this.
Okay.
But I'm gonna give you one. Cuomo.
Yes.
Should he? Is it time?
Well, I'm gonna go about it the same way I wanted to go about it with Kavanaugh. The media hyped him up. They didn't create Cuomo. Cuomo's governor. His family's come from money. Blah blah blah. But I don't believe that now 7 women just started coming forward after Trump was out of office. I believe this thing was already there, similar to what we found out about the Hunter Biden.
But are there complaints enough? Is this just kind of guy stuff?
Well, here's the thing. I'm not taking that bait. This is how I'm going to take this. Is it enough? I'm glad you threw that to me, because I'm gonna splice this. That same mentality. Me Too came out, and I'm telling you, had it been, this only could have happened to a Republican. What they did to Brett Kavanaugh. This only could have happened to him the way it did, because he didn't have 7 women. He had a woman with spotty memory and no, really nothing to back it up. Nothing but a letter that she had sent about 2-3 months ahead of time that Dianne Feinstein sat on, but there was nothing like what they have with these accusers.
Well, hold on for a minute. The reason you don't have that is the Republicans haven't attacked them. I'm sure if you attack them, there's some stuff. But I've been surprised how the Republicans have not gone after these ladies like they've gone after every other woman that ever claimed something against the Republican.
And there's okay, I'll give you that. But they don't have the same venom, which is my issue with Republicans. They don't approach it the same way Democrats did. There is no time that you can point to what they did to Brett Kavanaugh where Republicans have done that. That's only reserved for Republicans and conservatives. The type of treatment that the media and everybody who had an opinion and the Me Too movement and everybody else who wanted to associate with the Me Too movement, they gave Brett Kavanaugh the business. They drug him through. They had to give the guy the job. What else you want to do? I mean, they tore him down. Had this esteemed man crying for something he may have done, but he probably did not do it. But it was in high school. But we have a governor, someone in a position of authority, who.
But what has he done though? But listen, I hear ladies saying, "Well, he touched me on my lower back." Mm-hmm.
He Joe Biden her, except minus the sniff.
You're right. I'm. You're absolutely correct. He did. He's a little handsier than you think he should be. But that doesn't mean he's a progressive. I have not heard anybody say he locked them in a room and ripped their clothes off. I've not heard
that goes back, and I'm not taking that bait.
And maybe I'm a guy. Maybe I don't get how offensive some of this stuff is. And I get it is, but
well, we're talking about
this guy I am today. I've gotten my hand slapped once or twice. Let me just put it that way. I've got my hand slapped once or twice. And I've slapped a couple of hands. Let me say that. Hey, get your hand off. I don't know if it rises to you have to resign from your job because these things happen.
Well, when you're in a position that Cuomo's in, he's governor. And I think all these happened while he's sitting in that chair. Now, I don't think any of these came beforehand. Now, I haven't read any. I'm just going on what I've seen across the media. But, the body count is rising. So while you may not have to resign.
They're coming the countryside, though. But it's not, it's a lot of the stuff he's moving in social circles. I'm sorry. I get it. And I just don't think it shifts over. And I think men need to be careful. That allegation against you, I think he's due process. I'd love to see that. I love to see an environment. I love to see an environment where women get more say. But let's hold it right there for a minute, Professor. We got to take a quick break. Come back on the other side of the hour. And for those listening, we're going to make some major announcements and some major changes in our show. On the other side of the hour, we'll be right back after this quick break. You're listening to Texas News Radio, reality radio, where everybody can be a star. We'll be right back after this message.
When it comes comes to reality radio, everyone is a star.
I know that's right.
On your smooth soul and R&B station.
On the World Wide Web.
Access granted.
In Touch Radio.
Hello, Kubo. What have you got planned for today?
Come on, this way.
Adventure can be found anywhere, but the best place to start is in the forest.
It's the most powerful magic there is.
Head outside to discover incredible animals.
Wow.
And beautiful plants that come together to create an unforgettable adventure. So grab your loved ones and explore a world of possibilities. Visit discovertheforest.org to find the closest forest or park to you. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the U.S. Forest Service.
My teacher said that we should have a plan in case of an emergency. Do we have one?
First thing I'm going to do is grab a flashlight with dead batteries.
I'm going to start randomly throwing clothes in the bag. You two will be hiding in the closet and Dad won't be able to find you.
And that's when we both start crying.
Uncontrollably. Can you pass the cutlets?
Winging it is not an emergency plan. Make sure your kids know what to do during an emergency, who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Search Ready Kids at nyc.gov or call 311. Brought to you by the New York City Office of Emergency Management and the Ad Council.
In Touch Radio, where you can listen to a cruising flow of smooth soul and jazz, today's R&B, a fun touch of hip-hop and gospel.
All my music on one station.
Giving you a buffet of music, news, and entertainment. We're In Touch Radio.
All right, we're back live on In Touch News Radio, reality radio where everybody can be a star. My name is Clinton Parrish here with my co-host, Professor Tony Seabrook. Okay, Professor, let's clean this up. I'm gonna throw a real curveball at you.
Okay.
Let's bring in DJ Anna. Let's get a woman into this. Us men talking about how women might feel, how women might be affected. What kind of mess is this? DJ Anna, are you there? Can you shed some light for us on this situation?
Please.
All right, okay, let me help. Here we go. So the question really is, from what you've heard Governor Cuomo do, how offensive is his behavior? Now, is that sufficient for someone to lose their job? That's kind of where I'm at, trying to figure if you engage in these habitual behaviors, should you then lose your job because that's what you're doing that?
And that's the key point there. That is the key distinction.
They keep going. Okay, DJ Anna, thank you very much for that womanly insight for us guys sitting here trying to figure out what's offensive and not. Professor,
yeah.
We've now had Biden for 4 months, 3 months, 2 months, 2.5 months.
Yep. 2.5 months, 52 days now, 3 days.
What do you think? I've been doing this for a couple. What do you think? How's he doing?
Well, I don't know what the big hoop to do is that he hadn't done a press conference until he did the one about the COVID and the rescue plan, the longest on record of any president. I don't know if that's such a big deal, but it is a big deal to some people because they're making an issue of it on the outside of the house. But I think there were concerns. There are concerns why Biden is so just quiet. We can attribute that to him being older, his tenor, his statesmanship, but a younger Biden wouldn't have been so quiet and so passive. There's some concerns about him. So if I look at the content or consider the content of his address to the nation, it's typical Democrat stuff, mollycoddle, we need to tell you what to do. And even after you get this vaccine, you still won't be able to do anything until we tell you so. And just too much of that. You know, I get the whole thing about being altruistic, but this is too much. And I don't think that that's Biden. I don't think that that's a Joe Biden personality. It's Joe Biden listening to obviously his PR people, because he really doesn't come off as being too upbeat, and he may come off as being sincere, but you attribute that to his just low energy. I mean, the guy makes me, and I'm pretty low energy, and most of my talks have to be conscious to be a bit more animated. The guy makes me just feel like I'm just all over the place. But 52 days in, he hadn't done much wrong, but I think things are mounting because of his lack of position. I think the position that he has, his appointments, you know, his cabinet appointments kind of show who he's paying off, or, you know, paying off as in, okay, you know, you guys help me get in.
That's pretty standard though. You got to pay your various groups constituency with you know, your appointments. That's not that on you, but your understated criticism really, when we give it a correct factoring, means that he's excelling expectations.
Well, the only expectation that he's failing is that he hadn't completely forgot or just walked off aimlessly off stage, and they were expecting him to stay on stage, stick to the script.
Look, if you had been paying attention, you would have realized this guy, he's pretty savvy and on it. For an septuagenarian, he's pretty on it, Professor. But the other thing I think we want to touch on a little bit today is the announcement that you wanted to make. I know we've been talking about this, and we've been working with scheduling issues and stuff. But let's share with our people what you wanted to announce today.
Oh, great. Well, kind of unfortunately, I'm going to be taking a step back from the show. It's due to I'm in my dissertation phase of my PhD program. And initially, you know, things were working out, a show here and there, but this thing is really requiring my undivided attention, and I need to work through the night a lot of times to, you know, really get reading and research done. So gives me at least a chance to plug it. My dissertation is Tinto's theory, Vincent Tinto. Tinto's theory, which is really student departure. It started in the late 60s, early 70s. But Tinto's theory and the Black male experience. In a title, it was Tinto's theory and Black male persistence in the Florida college system. And I'm not talking about the USFs and the Florida. I'm talking about the Florida college system, which is basically the 28 community colleges that turned to state colleges, all except HCC and I think one other. That system, and it's been for decades, African Americans haven't fared as well as their counterparts. Asian Americans always really sailing at the top, and then they're Caucasians, and then, you know, African Americans. And in a lot of areas, and it's up and down, where Hispanics are fared better than us. Now, it depends on what report you look at, but it came to my attention a couple of years ago in one of the obligatory adjunct meetings, where I never look for it, but being an African-American male, when they share a stat that's not flattering to African-Americans, you know, especially when you in small numbers in a room, I'm never embarrassed, but I'm always looking to make sure, you know, how they're presenting that stat. So I'm not hypersensitive to it. I've been teaching 15 years. 1 year or a couple years ago, they stopped reporting. So since I have a little seniority there, although an adjunct, I asked the question, hey, you know, are we done with that section? We normally talk about the breakouts. And I can tell by the looks that they didn't want to go there. So I'm smart enough not to push it. I asked them questions after the meeting, and they basically said, you know, we're not using that dashboard anymore. Went to the dashboard, and the reason why, because retainment, persistence means that I stayed in school, maybe not at the school I started, I transferred, but I stayed in school. And there are real good reasons why one would do that. You know, we go off, you know, a scholarship out of state. We know out of state tuition is high, so one transfers back home and finishes at a local school. That makes sense. But African American, and in particular males, have been falling off. I mean, now we're down to, we barely get up in double digits as far as graduation. Persistence from the time they enter to graduation has really been dwindling. So that's my dissertation, that's my focus. And I'm not forecasting either way, because I believe there's some accountability issues for everybody, no matter what ethnic group that we belong to. But I also have some hypotheses that, I think that there's a positive relationship between integration and commitment. And that's the two continuums that I'm doing the research: integration socially, integrated into the school, and then academically integrated into the school. And then along commitment is, what's the commitment of African-American Black males to the goal of graduation? And then what's their commitment to the actual academic institution? So, theoretically, there are a lot of schools of thought. So I'm looking to carry that through. And I need to step back to give it its full attention, because I'm not doing just to do it.
Right, understandable. Listen, first of all, I think everybody applauds pursuing higher education, and then the effort to study something so important and sensitive and impactful in our community. I think it's very worthwhile. So I commend you for that, and I wish you well with that. But you can't just leave me here by myself. I mean, we've seen me go in the ditch a couple of times. So one of the things that we've done, we've scoured the country for talent and ability, and DJ CEO has come up with what we think will be a great stand-in, somebody to kind of help out with us, and that is Pete Edwards. DJ Anna, do you have Pete Edwards in studio there? Right. Good morning, Mr. Edwards. How you doing? Good morning. I missed it. So for those people, this is Pete Edwards, known to some folks as Sweet Pete, and he is a local, well-known radio personality, a community activist, just been involved in our community for decades. And when we were thinking about bringing Pete on the show, I reached out to someone who said, listen, I had Pete Edwards in a high school debate competition, and he just floored the cup. That was Delano Stewart. He said, look, Pete will do a great job. So Pete, welcome to the show. How you doing this morning? Now, you've done some other radio activities in Tampa. Tell us about those. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. Well, Pete, I think you definitely will bring some seasoned insight to our discussions that we have here on the show. We focus a lot on the political stuff on a national level, and then we drill it down into our community if we can. But the main thing is that we have a conversation about things that are affecting people. And if I were just to inquire with you this morning, how have you seen this virus really impact the people in the community as you see it? Yeah.
Mm.
Was that like a eugenics experiment, or what was that experiment in North Carolina? I thought it was. I've heard about it.
Is it what
eugenics or something?
The African American woman, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Let me ask this, Pete, got you here. What about the underlying and overarching political components of this? It was politicized on the front end. I was just looking at some stats today that were saying that the two groups that are struggling with under-vaccine, the Black community and hardcore Trump Republicans, who are not looking, who are not willing, they kind of, and the crazy part is Trump got the vaccine. How do we deal with that component of the situation as well as we go forward? Well, I think we're going to need to do this, Pete, with me talking and you talking. We're going to have to lobby DJ CEO down for another hour. So we both got share. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we're looking forward to having you as a part of the show, Mr. Edwards. Thank you so much for sitting in with us this morning. And listen, you will have a full time at the microphone next week to say whatever it is that you feel. We want to be open and as transparent as possible. Real quickly, Professor, your thoughts about the politicization of the vaccine. What's happening on the Republican side with the resistance? Is it still kind of like a way of reaffirming your commitment to Trump, or people really just think it's not good for them?
Well, no, I think those are the two camps people put it in. So if you're a Republican or a Trump supporter and you don't agree with the vaccination, it's because your allegiance to President Trump. he thinks like us, or we think like him, or we think similar. My thing is, the reason why I'm not getting this, because first of all, it's a virus that has a over 90-something%, like 90.23%, my age group, 0.234% success rate. So even if I were to contract it, I have a higher chance of beating it than anything else. They're not talking about the side effects to it, not as a scare tactic. It's not why I'm bringing this up, but have the full conversation. And what bothers me the most, and Pete, please hear me here, what bothers me the most is when they approach the African-American community as if we are too dumb to come in out the rain. So they have to dumb it down, help you find it online. I'm gonna send somebody to your house to pick you up. I mean, we don't need that type of stuff. So because my dissertation is not about us not being able to do it. We're trying to figure out what are those things, where do we do well, what's the difference, how we approach things. So it's the same thing here, but the politicization is across the board. I think the Democrats did it because it happened under Trump. Trump was trying to put some things in place. So, no, we're not going to take it. I won't take that vaccine because it's under Trump. They started that kind of conversation. And so when people don't want to take it, they can, oh, it's your fault and it's the Republicans' fault that we don't want to take it. When they started that whole crap about, I won't take that vaccine because they didn't think it would be here within a year. So now you can't take those words back because you set the stage for it. So now when we have these conversations, people try to break it out into political groups. But to kind of piggyback on what Pete said, and then this conversation, if you think about the Tuskegee experiment that happened in the context of the Department of Health and Human Services, it was their predecessor. This just wasn't some kook who got some guys together and say, hey, look, let me see if I can, do this for you guys. This was a structured experiment. So under the guise of the government and then the health entity of the government. So there's reason for people to be skeptical when you approach the African-American community with this group that we need you guys to be, tested and inoculated more than any other demographic, when I don't think that's the case. And one last thing, the miseducation of the Negro, Dr. C.G. Carter, Carter Z. Watson, I'm butchering his name, there you go, Woodson. There's a chapter in there where he talks about how the Caucasians made it seem like the African Americans, our systems were inferior. But in reality, it's because they were exposed to these maladies more so than us, so it affected us differently. It's not because our systems are so much inferior. So when the government comes out with this whole mollycoddle, hey, we just want to help you guys out. Hey, man, just tell me about it. Give me the option to take it. Where's that Me Too energy? My body, my choice. We need that same energy. You can't just be hypocritical about it. We need you to do this, but, you can do anything else with your body you want if it's a child involved. So, I mean, you just have to kind of balance these conversations out.
Professor, you're going to be gone for a while, and hopefully we'll maintain your ability to appear on occasion on the show. Yeah. So I'm going to give you the final 2 minutes to share anything you'd like to share, whatever you'd like to say to our listeners as we sign off on today's show.
Well, you're right. I will be coming back on the show. I'm probably going to use the show as one of the venues to find participants in my study. I'm looking at doing a quarter of the schools. So there are 28 schools in the Florida college system. I want to do at least 7 schools. I'm not sure what that number is. But I'm hoping that, we go forward. I know I'm going to miss the show. I'm going to try to listen to it and resist the temptation to call in when Clint starts riding on that left side and this whole thing with Republicans, and the reason why Trump is this, that, and the other. But it's been a great experience. And I just look forward to coming back and sharing with you guys. And I wish you guys well, and, we'll go from there.
Appreciate it. All right, good stuff. Pete, well, thank you very much, Pete, for agreeing to come in and be a part of the show. I'm looking forward to some engaging discussions. I got to get my, Pete, you quit, Pete. So I got to change my strategies that I've used on the professors so far. So I have to change some of that stuff up, though. But we look forward to having you on the show, Pete, and thanks a lot for joining us this morning.
Okay.
All right, then. All right, well, that's a wrap. Professor, thank you very much. I wish you well and look forward to talking in the future. This is In Touch News Radio, reality radio where everybody can be a star. Stick around for The Sole Purpose coming up next. Thank you very much. All right.